This is CBC Nova Scotia News.
Landslide. Newly chosen Liberal leader Mark Carney prepares to assume the role of Prime Minister of Canada. Paper thin. Politicians say it'll be difficult to defend a Cape Breton-based industry from potential Trump tariffs. And an anti-racism workshop at the RCMP leads to charges over intellectual property rights.
Another frosty start to Tuesday, but temperatures warming nicely as our next system slides in with a few showers overnight into Wednesday. Your full forecast is coming up.
A new era in Canadian federal politics has begun. Liberals voted overwhelmingly for Mark Carney as their new leader, and he is now set to replace Justin Trudeau as Canada's next Prime Minister.
The Liberal Party is united and strong and ready to fight to build an even better country.
Carney captured 86% of the vote, more than 10 times the support of the second-place finisher, former Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland. Carney has never held public office, but he will soon be sworn in as Canada's 24th Prime Minister. One of Carney's first priorities will be fighting Trump's tariff threats.
The Canadian government has rightly retaliated and is rightly retaliating with our own tariffs that will have maximum impact in the United States and minimum impact here in Canada. And my government will keep our tariffs on until the Americans show us respect.
Premier Tim Houston posted on social media Monday to congratulate Carney. Houston says he looks forward to working with the new prime ministers to stand up against the tariffs. He also says he is hopeful Carney will support the construction of a pipeline to bring oil and gas east to Nova Scotia and make the province more energy reliable. Nova Scotia's Port Hawkesbury Paper, a major employer in southern Cape Breton, says it is extremely vulnerable to the Trump administration's now paused tariffs. Local politicians say if the mill is in trouble, so is the entire region. Kayla Hounsell reports.
It may look like business as usual at this paper mill.
So we debark the logs.
But behind the scenes, it's pretty chaotic. Port Hawkesbury Paper exports 93% of its product to the United States, where it's largely used to print catalogs and magazines. So a 25% tariff poses a significant threat.
It's a material risk to our business.
The company is located on the southern end of Cape Breton Island, and people here say if the mill is in trouble, the whole area is in trouble.
We understand that some challenge in some part of our industrial sector is going to have tentacles that reaches out pretty dramatically.
The mill directly employs 325 people and contracts 900 more.
Anytime there's a disruption to them, there's ultimately a disruption to us.
This forestry contractor sells 40% of the wood it harvests to Port Hawkesbury Paper.
They also support and fund a lot of silviculture work and growing of trees. So to our business, it'd be a major impact.
Since the trade war began, many industries and businesses have been trying to diversify markets. But Port Hawkesbury Paper says it really can't. The U.S. is the only market for the majority of its products if it wants to run a viable business.
The markets in Europe, for instance, it's a large market. It's also suffering from pretty significant overcapacity. Canada is also a really good market, but it's small.
Instead, the company is trying to cut costs wherever it can so it can withstand the tariffs as long as possible.
We can't wipe out the impact, but any little thing we can do is critical right now.
He says he has no plans to cut jobs at the moment, but says if the tariffs kick in again and last long term, his company will face an existential crisis. Kayla Hounsell, CBC News, Point Tupper, Nova Scotia.
Meanwhile, China's new tariffs are expected to hit on March the 20th and will have a big impact on seafood industries in the Maritimes. The move from Beijing is in retaliation against tariffs Canada imposed on Chinese electric vehicles late last year. Included is a 25% tariff on aquatic products. One of the main impacts will be on shellfish like crab and lobster, and the tariff is the same whether the product is live, canned, or frozen.
It was, I guess, a bit stunning because we're dealing with exactly the same challenge in our other major market, namely the United States. But at the same time, many people in the industry have had this concern that we could see these kinds of actions by China. They have taken similar actions in the recent past against U.S. lobster in 2019 and against Australian rock lobster as well. So I guess it just adds to the craziness that we've been dealing with and the uncertainty.
Richard says tariffs could hit especially hard if they come into the middle of the spring fishing season, which for many opens in April. It's not fishing season out there just yet, but it's getting warmer this week.
Yeah, definitely. Temperatures heading in the right direction, Tom, this week. Tuesday, we'll see a temperature bump, though. Won't feel like it to start the day. Another cold night, Monday night, and to start Tuesday. Thank you so much. As we look at these highs, though, bumping up quite nicely. 1, 2, 3 degrees across Cape Breton Island, but the mainland into the 3, 4, 5, 6. Likely even 7 and 8 degrees western areas of the valley. Now, the notable thing for Tuesday is going to be these southerly winds. Starting from the southeast, 20 gusting 30 to 40, shifting to straight southerly, 40 sustained, gusting 50 to even 60 kilometers per hour. So, yeah, it will be a pretty gusty, bit no doubt impactful on how it feels, but still mild. That area of high pressure sliding off to the south, and in the morning that is going to allow that southerly wind to come in as we have a warm front off to our north. Watching a front that will bring some showers for Tuesday night into Wednesday morning. We're clearing and cooling again, but then temperatures really climbing late week. We're talking double digits for the weekend, Tom. All the details on that coming up.
Do stay tuned. Okay, Ryan, thanks so much.
Thank you.
A black RCMP sergeant who helped create an anti-racism workshop for his employer says he was pushed out of his job after he raised intellectual property concerns. Sergeant Craig Smith was an integral part of creating the African Canadian Experience workshop, but says he and the RCMP are in a dispute over who owns the material used in the course. Josh Hoffman reports.
Sergeant Craig Smith has worked for the RCMP for nearly 30 years. He has spent about half his career developing different versions of what is now known as the RCMP's African Canadian Experience Workshop. Smith, who is also an award-winning author, says he used the research from one of his books as the foundation of the workshop. So when he found out the RCMP was going to make the course available to all police services in Canada, he raised the question of intellectual property.
So it was going to grow. And I didn't think it was fair that my material be used without my permission and without me being compensated for it.
However, an intellectual property lawyer says unless you're a contractor or a third party, Canadian copyright law is typically on the side of the employer in these cases.
Your employer will own all of the works that you create in the course of your employment.
RCMP declined CBC's request to interview Smith's supervisors at national headquarters. Nova Scotia's commanding officer says he's aware of Smith's concerns, but he's not in charge of the African Canadian Experience Workshop, and he won't comment on personnel issues.
What I can tell you is that I am 100% committed to the delivery of the African Canadian Experience course, and I look forward to continuing to educate our employees. That's the important focus for me.
That's difficult for Smith to accept after all the time and effort he spent building up the course. He says instead of sitting down to have a discussion over coffee rate, the RCMP just removed his material from the workshop.
You have one of the hottest courses in the country, and again, not from me, but from the 700 folks that have taken the course that wrote that in their evaluations, and all of a sudden you want to dismantle it completely? It makes no sense whatsoever.
For Smith, he says, it feels contradictory for an institution like the RCMP to say they want to address systemic racism and then do something like this. Josh Hoffman, CBC News, Halifax.
The federal government has awarded a contract to Irving Shipbuilding in Halifax to construct naval destroyers. Irving will construct 3 River-class destroyers over the next 6 years, with 9 new ships expected by 2040. Ottawa says the project will create thousands of jobs in the Halifax area. The long-term plan is to build a total of 15 new destroyers, which will replace the aging Halifax-class frigates. Officials with the Nova Scotia government are talking about developing a midwifery school at a Nova Scotia university. They point to Mount St. Vincent University and Cape Breton University as possible locations. Liz Fraser says the Association of Nova Scotia Midwives welcomes the idea. The group has been advocating for a local midwifery school for years.
If we had a training program here in the province, I think it would really increase our chances of being able to retain more of our own midwives. We would also be able to attract more midwives from elsewhere in the country because many midwives are very interested in teaching, and many of us have advanced education in addition to our midwifery training.
Health Minister Michelle Thompson says talks about a midwifery school are in the very early stages. A new community wellness centre opened its doors to the public in New Waterford. It includes a family resources centre, new school and recreational facilities. A long-term care home is also part of the plans but has yet to be built. The CBC's Kyle Moore has the story.
The former Breton Education Centre is being reduced to rubble. Piece by piece, the former school is coming down. Students and staff moved next door in September. Attached to that state-of-the-art facility is a new community wellness centre.
My thoughts are this is a game changer for the community, and I just can't wait to see it in operation and to see that all the synergy that's created because of this construction project.
According to a recent report, New Waterford has a child poverty rate of 39.8%, which is 390 children. Lowell Cormier says it's no secret that many people are struggling in the community. He says programs offered in the new facility will help.
We need programs that attack the social determinants of health and have this kind of facility with all strong community-based volunteer groups and government, Department of Health and government services.
We have this wonderful kitchen facility so we can do some low-cost cooking programs and then provide people with some of those basic shelf items so that maybe then you just have to buy the fresh things to go along with it.
Joanne Latulap-Rochon is Executive Director of Cape Breton Family Place Resource Centre. Part of her role is offering programs for seniors, families and youth.
We've had a prenatal program happening here for the last couple of weeks. They're amazed that they have this kind of a space and being able to not need to take sort of that half an hour drive on either end to go into the neighbouring community, which they were happy to do at the time.
The Wellness Centre is part of a larger New Waterford Community Hub project, which includes a future health centre and long-term care home that will be built on the former site of Breton Education Centre. Kyle Moore, CBC News, New Waterford.
Nova Scotia Health is urging people to get vaccinated against measles following a sharp rise in cases in Canada and the United States. Nova Scotia has no cases yet, but officials do not expect that to last. Canada has reported more measles cases in the first 2 months of 2025 than in all of 2024. One of the ways Nova Scotia Health is tackling the spread is through free mobile measles vaccination clinics.
So the recommendation for people who are 55 or older, you've likely been exposed to measles, and you might have someone in your life who's told you you got measles when you were a child. But if you don't have that evidence and you're not sure, the measles vaccine is safe, and so we'd recommend that if you're traveling out of country or to an area in Canada that is highly affected with measles right now, that you talk to whoever provides you a measles vaccine or your vaccines regularly and get 1 dose of vaccine before you travel.
Babies can get the vaccine as early as 6 months old if they'll be traveling outside of Canada. 227 measles cases have been reported in Canada so far this year. Nova Scotia Health says it's ideally looking for 95% of the population to be vaccinated. Willem Vandenhoek of Nova Scotia's Dutchman's Cheese Farm died last week. He was a familiar face to many Nova Scotians visiting the Halifax Seaport Market. The Vandenhoek family announced his death this week, saying he provided more than 4 decades of cheeses, lively discussions, and endless projects with his family, friends, and cheese lovers.
The last few days, like since we posted it on social media, going through and reading the comments, it's amazing that the interactions he had with other people, and some of the stuff is from 30 or 40 years ago, which is quite amazing. He really played a part in many people's lives at that Saturday market and at the farm, of course.
Vandenhoek was 76 years old. There you go. We're heading to our first commercial break. Ryan's up next with the forecast. All right, as we headed to break there, we saw a bit of a shot there of the Halifax harbor, and yeah, a few flurries in the air, a little gray tonight for sure, but encouraging to hear things are going to warm up.
Yeah, and brighten the skies will significantly for Tuesday. Lots of sunshine, a cold start, windshield scraping yet again, but we are looking at a great afternoon. And then a bit of a reset temperature-wise Wednesday, but then climbing Thursday into the weekend. So let's get to it. Let's have a look at our high temperatures today. Did get to 2 on the plus side. Halifax, Western Head at 3, Kedzie at 2. Temps a bit cooler in through the north and east, but yeah, not too bad. And looking at those temperatures out there right now, we've slid to -2 to -4 across Cape Breton Island. At 0 in Halifax, -1 at the airport to 2 and 3 degrees down the South Shore into the Tri-County area. As we look at those winds, yeah, a little bit on the breezy side. Yarmouth sustained at 28 and gusting to 30 in through the Cape Breton region right now. But overall, not too bad wind-wise. That is going to change for Tuesday, we will be looking at some stronger winds from the south, gusting 50, even 60 kilometers per hour. So we'll be definitely feeling the winds for Tuesday. There are those flurries that are rolling through right now. Just a weak disturbance that's tracking through here. Nothing too significant from this. Those flurries are fairly light, and watching kind of the backside of this starting to pull away already. The clouds certainly in the mix right now, but we will see the skies clearing. And then this warm front, this is what will drape over the region for Tuesday, primarily bringing flurries to northern New Brunswick, whereas the rest of the Maritimes will get into the sunshine and the mild temperatures. This system will be a swing and a miss for us. Looking at an area of high pressure following up this system here. This is the one where we will be watching with some colder air on the other side of this cold frontal boundary. And there's the front there. That will sink in and bring us a little bit of a reset. Winter kind of settling back into the prairies right now, -11 in Regina, -8 in Winnipeg. But yeah, overall, looking pretty spring-like for our forecast over the next 7 days. Tonight, temperatures are going to be dropping into the -7 to -12 range for most of us, a little bit milder here and through the Tri-County area. The winds, relatively light, and we'll see a few flurries right along the Atlantic coastline this evening, and then clearing overnight. There's the forecast outlook here with your hour by hour. Those flurries, as you can see, those will depart, and we are looking at quiet conditions overnight. Just a few clouds. That chilly start, as we said, so make sure you got that windshield scraper ready to go in the morning, and then just a ton of sunshine. Make sure you've got the sunglasses ready to go in the morning as well. Going to need that. Note into Tuesday afternoon, those winds first from the southeast and then straight up from the south. And again, they will be pretty breezy indeed. Forecast temperature highs 1 to 3 degrees across Cape Breton Island. Will be 0 to 3 along the Guysborough County coastline into Antigonish near 5 degrees. And likely in the 4 or 5 degree range back through Pictou County, as warm as 6 there, and looking at 4 or 5 degrees through most of central parts of Nova Scotia. And again, those southeast winds will become southerly into the afternoon. That's when things will get quite breezy. And we are looking at Tuesday afternoon highs. I think the warmest spots for the province tomorrow will be right here through Annapolis Royal, actually back as far east as Greenwood and Middleton and Berwick, back through Annapolis Royal to Digby. This will be our warm pocket, 7-8 degrees there. Now, Wednesday's temperatures will be mildest in the morning, and then the winds from the northwest will drop our temperatures throughout the day as the skies clear. So the front comes through with showers for Tuesday night into Wednesday morning, waking up with a few drops, especially for eastern areas, then clearing into the afternoon, but temperatures falling in that northwest wind. Area of high pressure settling in for Thursday. That'll likely, even it's kind of a dirty high, so we won't really see a whole lot of brilliant sunshine on Thursday. It looks like the clouds will dominate at times through Thursday. Temperatures right around 2 degrees. That's pretty much where we should be for this time of year. And then really warming up quite nicely through Friday. That looks like a great day. Saturday looks like double digits. I think we'll stay dry Saturday. Some drizzle on Sunday, Tom, but into the double digits as well. Showers should hold off until Sunday night.
It's not sounding bad.
Yeah, not bad at all.
All right, thanks so much, Ryan.
Thank you.
Coming up, where was ice hockey really invented? We dig into the history around Canada's favorite pastime. Welcome back. Well, where is the rightful birthplace of hockey? It depends on who you ask. The first organized game was played back in Montreal in 1875, but people in Delaney, Northwest Territories, Quebec City, and of course right here in Windsor, Nova Scotia, have different opinions.
Where was hockey invented? And before you say Montreal, think again. The Canadian game isn't as Canadian as you might think. Most historians agree that the birth of the sport can be traced back to Great Britain from the ancient sport of shinty back in the 1600s, when the players apparently played on sea ice. This is believed to be the first ever image of someone playing ice hockey with a puck. The dashing gentleman was playing on the Thames River in this drawing, published in 1797. Okay, there's maybe that, but it doesn't change the fact that for a long time, Canadians have claimed this sport as our own. As our men proved recently at the Four Nations Faces. So that raises the question, where in North America is the birthplace of hockey? And that question creates confusion and some arguing. Yes, the first organized game was in Montreal in 1875, but people in Windsor, Nova Scotia and Delaney, Northwest Territories beg to differ. Both of those places say hockey or something close to hockey started in their town. Scores!
In 1988, when the school next door was celebrating their 200th anniversary, and they found documentation of two boys, they even named them, Pete Delancey and John Kennard, and one of them getting the front teeth knocked out with a hurley on Long Pond, and that was 1805 to 1818, that period. Windsor's up front right now, and it's been since 1988, and trust me, we've been in a lot of debates, but we're holding our ground.
We think it's an honor to be, recognized as maybe the first place hockey actually happened in the Northwest Territories. I don't know whether or not we'll ever truly determine where the first game actually happened. Well, maybe we should have a hockey game, and let's see who wins. Elders used to tell us stories when we were growing up about the fact that there was something going on. They couldn't describe hockey because they didn't know what it meant. They weren't running and they weren't flying. They didn't know how to describe that in the language, right? We had no clue what the elders were talking about. When hockey historians came forward and said, look, we found this letter that makes reference to the fact that Sir John Franklin and his crew, when they came to Dillon in 1825, 1826, were playing a game of hockey to pass the time.
Maybe less organized games, but hockey nonetheless. Those two towns have been laying claim for years. But what if they're both wrong?
I am Marc Durand, and I'm walking near the Rivière Saint-Charles in Quebec City, where we played shinty on ice on New Year's Day, 1825.
This hockey historian was working on a book when he stumbled upon an announcement in the Quebec Mercury newspaper from more than 200 years ago.
December 21, 1824, there's an ad, there's a story that they will play shinty on the little river, la Rivière Saint-Charles, for the New Year's Eve. And they invite all the friends of Scotland to join in and to play camanach. That's the word that they called in Gaelic language, the shinty.
And some other hockey historians agree.
I'm not saying that they didn't play something that looked like hockey in Windsor, but we don't have the same level of evidence. Delaney is sort of out of their race because they're later, so the Quebec City one can hardly be refuted. I mean, it was clearly documented.
I hope they're not mad at us.
The debate could rage on forever. And maybe that's a good thing.
When someone finds something, then it's encouraging. It means, well, not everything has been found yet. So maybe we can keep looking and find some more. So yes, it's wonderful.
So, a rich history of hockey in Quebec City. But what about the future of the sport in the province's capital? I mean, there hasn't been a pro team to cheer for there since 1995 when the Nordiques left. So the city that could lay claim to the first instance of hockey in North America, the effort to bring pros back to town is unwavering. So since then, there's always been a push to bring pro hockey back to Quebec City.
Coming up, message of unity. Amid global tensions, King Charles emphasizes the importance of countries working together. And pushing for a truce with Russia. High-stakes meetings between Ukraine and the U.S. begin tomorrow in Saudi Arabia. Welcome back. Mark Carney is launching into his role as the Liberal Party's new leader after his landslide win. In the coming days, the former two-time central banker will replace Justin Trudeau as Canada's next Prime Minister. The CBC's Ashley Burke looks at what it means for the party with with a federal election on the horizon.
Mr. Carney, when will there be an election? Fresh off the heels of his landslide victory, Mark Carney on Parliament Hill to discuss what comes next.
The transition, Prime Minister and myself, that transition will be seamless and it will be quick.
On day one as Liberal leader, Carney meeting with the Prime Minister, then his caucus.
I'm really happy today that a new era is starting.
I think the party is rejuvenated, re-energized.
Wayne Long, the first MP who publicly called on Justin Trudeau to resign, says he's now among the MPs Carney convinced to run again in the next election.
He said, look, you could be a part of my team. I would like you to reconsider offerings.
Carney's gearing up to send Canadians to the polls, trying to build on the momentum he saw last night after handedly winning the leadership race with almost 86% of the vote.
Donald Trump is trying to weaken our economy. But there's someone else who, if he succeeds, will weaken our economy. It's Pierre Poilievre.
Carney's never held public office before and is facing an uphill battle. The Conservatives are still leading in the polls, and Canada's in a trade war. Trudeau's former principal secretary helped with Carney's campaign.
I think the country could use an election, frankly. I think the country could use a government with a strong mandate to negotiate with Donald Trump.
Liberals say they're ready to jump into a quick election.
We have signs in storage and they're always ready, and the volunteers in our riding have been working hard for the last number of years.
I am ready for an election in Beaches East York, and I think we got a fair fighting chance.
The Conservatives already taking aim at Carney, attacks that are expected to ramp up.
I think the Conservatives are resorting to the kind of dirty personal politics that Mr. Poilievre has been known for since he was in cabinet with Stephen Harper.
Mark Carney has named former cabinet minister Marco Mendicino as his chief of staff for his transition. Carney is expected to take office and swear in his cabinet this week. Then sources say he's aiming to trigger an election before Parliament was set to resume at the end of the month, with a vote in late April or early May. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Ottawa.
While Mark Carney has been a public figure for decades, many Canadians are just getting to know him. Chief political correspondent Rosemary Barton looks at who he was before becoming Canada's next Prime Minister.
This is no time for politics as usual.
Mark Carney pitched himself as an outsider, not a politician, but someone who would have the skills needed to meet the moment.
No, it's not the time for lifelong politicians such as Pierre Poilievre.
He was born in Fort Smith, Northwest Territories, raised in Edmonton. His father, Bob, ran for the Liberals, coming in second to the Progressive Conservatives. Carney studied economics abroad. For 13 years, he worked for global investment banking firm Goldman Sachs, before holding several senior positions at the Bank of Canada and in the finance department in Ottawa. In 2008, then Prime Minister Stephen Harper appointed Carney to run the Bank of Canada, the second youngest bank governor ever.
Some of the world's largest financial institutions have recorded substantial losses.
Amid the global financial crisis, Carney called for widespread reforms to the world's financial system.
Double hats now as the head of the International Financial Stability Board.
Working alongside Harper Conservatives, Carney was credited for how well Canada weathered the financial storm compared to other nations. Even named as one of Time magazine's 100 most influential people in 2010.
Canada has shone, relatively speaking, in the world during the period of time in which Governor Carney has served as the governor of the Bank of Canada.
In 2013, Carney became the governor of the Bank of England, becoming the first ever foreigner to be named to that role. He later agreed to stay on at the helm for 2 extra years to help ease the Brexit transition. More recently, Carney worked for investment firm Brookfield Asset Management, served as the United Nations Special Envoy on Climate Action.
2/3 of carbon being priced by the end of the decade.
For years, he supported a carbon tax, only to walk away from the policy at the start of the leadership race.
Why don't I become a circus clown? I mean, it's like...
For more than a decade, Carney toyed with the idea of running for the top job of the Liberal Party.
I have gainful employment, and I intend to continue it.
In 2020, Prime Minister Trudeau tapped Carney to serve as an informal advisor on the government's pandemic recovery plan.
Mark Carney!
He immediately became a front-runner in the leadership race when Trudeau resigned earlier this year. He has never held public office, but Liberals bought his pitch. Now he will have to convince Canadians.
That's the CBC's chief political correspondent, Rosemary Barton. It's Commonwealth Day in Britain, and this year's celebrations included nods to Canada from King Charles and other top royals. Until now, British officials have not spoken in defense of Canada's sovereignty, despite threats of annexation by U.S. President Donald Trump. But as Chris Brown reports, as royals gathered for the annual event in London, the message was clear.
On a day to celebrate the Commonwealth, King Charles and other top royals came to Westminster Abbey with a message of solidarity. In these uncertain times, he said in a statement, where it's all too easy to believe our differences are problems, the Commonwealth's remarkable collection of nations and peoples come together in the spirit of support. For Canada, support is the key word.
We are a family.
The Secretary General of the organization told us Canada will remain a stalwart, sovereign country despite the bluster of U.S. President Trump.
What I think it does is to make us even more determined to stand with all of our friends.
Of late, the King has taken on the role of a figure of reassurance, meeting with Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky after he was berated by Donald Trump, and also seeing Justin Trudeau. British media suggest the friction between Canada and the United States is very much on his mind. There have been some subtle but notable signs of support from the royals. The King has been out in public wearing his Canadian medals. And Catherine, the Princess of Wales, wore red with a white necklace.
Nothing happens by accident with the royal family. The princess was absolutely resplendent in red today.
Canada's High Commissioner to the UK says allies are lining up behind Canada.
In this world, we all have to fight our own battles in organizations like the Commonwealth and many other multilateral organizations. Canada's reputation is strong.
With 56 countries and vast inequality, the Commonwealth is beset with questions about its usefulness. But boosters say there's room to improve trade links in new markets, which Canada needs. Chris Brown, CBC News, London.
A cargo ship has collided with a tanker carrying jet fuel for the U.S. military off the coast of eastern England. It caused both vessels to catch fire and triggered multiple explosions on board. Miraculously, authorities say all 37 crew members from the two ships were safe and accounted for, with one hospitalized. The oil tanker was at anchor near the port of Grimsby when the cargo vessel struck it. It ruptured the side and sent fuel pouring into the North Sea. The fiery collision triggered a major rescue operation by lifeboats, Coast Guard aircraft, and commercial vessels. The cause of the crash is being investigated. There's also concern about the environmental impact from the spill. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky is in Saudi Arabia ahead of talks with the U.S. His country's delegation is set to meet with America's top diplomat about ending the war with Russia. As Briar Stewart reports, Kyiv is under increasing pressure from the Trump administration, but also on the battlefield for Russia.
Ukraine's president met with the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia today ahead of talks between Ukrainian and U.S. officials. Those will take place in Jeddah, and it's the first official meeting since that acrimonious one at the Oval Office last month. Now, Volodymyr Zelensky won't be taking part in the discussion. Instead, Ukrainian officials will be. On the U.S. side, there will be Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, and Steve Witkoff, an envoy for the Trump administration. Witkoff has said that he expects Ukraine to sign the minerals deal. That's that contentious agreement which led to the flare-up in Washington, as Zelensky wanted it to include security guarantees. U.S. President Donald Trump and his officials keep talking about how they expect a lot of progress from this week's meetings, and they want to introduce a framework for peace in Ukraine. There are no details, however, on what that would actually look like and how both sides would be able to strike a deal. There is no doubt, though, that Ukraine is under a lot of pressure, not only on the battlefield, but also from Washington after the U.S. halted military aid and curbed the sharing of intelligence information. Briar Stewart, CBC News, London.
We are reconnecting this week with the CBC News team in Antarctica, where an all-Canadian research team has reached an active volcano near the other end of the world. Deception Island carries a lot of history, but the site also holds clues about a warming planet's future. Susan Ormiston has that story.
Marking their territory near the relics of a former whaling station. Abandoned, like the Chilean and British bases, which were here on Deception Island, before volcanic eruptions in the late 1960s chased them away, leaving Whalers Bay to its natural inhabitants, mostly.
What happens in Antarctica doesn't stay in Antarctica.
Tom James is the chief scientist of an all-Canadian expedition to Antarctica. He's studying sea level rise.
The Antarctic ice sheet contains enormous amounts of fresh water, and as the ice sheet thins and melts in places, calves at faster rates, that's going to affect global sea level change.
Antarctica's glaciers are receding and sea ice reached near record lows last month. Both contribute to rising global sea levels at an increasing rate.
The planet is changing extremely quickly, and so what we see in the Canadian Arctic is also mirrored in Antarctica. And by engaging in Antarctica, we not only learn about the other pole, as it were, but we also engage with the very large number of nations that are doing Antarctic research.
This is where they used to process all the whale blubber, one of a very few examples of a commercial settlement here on the continent. Under the Antarctic Treaty, it wouldn't be allowed today. But the island is still changing, with luxury ships bringing thousands of tourists. James is collecting samples for a fellow scientist who wants to measure how ship traffic may be impacting such a remote place.
What we're doing is adding to that body of knowledge of how are contaminants dispersing globally, how are glaciers retreating, and how is that retreat of glaciers and overall climate warming changing the environment.
100 years ago, whalers perished on this frozen island. Now data from here will help forecast our climates next century. Susan Ormiston, CBC News, Deception Island, Antarctica.
The toll of Trump's trade war is being felt in a small Washington state community south of Vancouver. Point Roberts, on the southern tip of a peninsula cut off by the Canada-U.S. border, attributes about 90% of its economic activity to Canada. But tariffs are putting a chill on neighborly relations. The CBC's Yvette Bren reports.
U.S. and Canadian citizens have been intertwined in Point Roberts for more than 100 years. Many Canadians come here for cheap gas, groceries, or the seaside. But the trade war has slowed that traffic to a trickle, cutting border crossings almost in half.
If I don't do well in the next few months here, I might have to close my doors. It's very sad.
Cafe manager Ailish Wallace says U.S. tariffs have turned off tourists.
Sad, angry, frustrated, hopeful that, it'll turn itself around and we won't have this continued stress and pressure.
The trade war has slowed investment and building. So her husband, a contractor, is forced to leave his family and head to Hawaii, where he can earn a living by helping rebuild after fires there.
We want to keep our home.
We can't do without Canada's support. We won't exist.
This man is fighting for the community his grandmother settled in. He's petitioning Canada to exempt Point Roberts from any retaliatory taxes or tariffs.
And 90% of our economic activity comes from British Columbia. 90%. Take that away and say we're not coming to Point Roberts anymore. We're done. We're done.
This community relies on Canada for business, electricity, even water. The community is so Canadian-friendly, gas is sold by the liter. Pandemic restrictions hit Point Roberts hard. Tariffs for some may be the final blow.
It's all Canadians who are buying the gas.
Canadian Bob Cook acknowledges the tension.
People in Canada are outraged. They feel like they've been attacked, and they're just furious.
But he says he's still standing by his neighbor.
I'm not going to boycott Point Roberts. These are my friends here.
So he's doing what he can to push back on the paradigm shift by showing up for old friends. Yvette Brand, CBC News, Point Roberts, Washington.
Alex Ovechkin continues to cement himself as one of the greatest players in NHL history after an empty netter last night in the Washington Capitals win against the Seattle Kraken.
Wilson looking to elevate for Ovechkin. There's an empty net waiting. Alex on the backhand! Point number 1,600 for the Great Eight is an empty net clincher.
That was Ovechkin scoring his 886th NHL goal. That puts him just 9 goals short of breaking Wayne Gretzky's all-time record. Ovechkin was able to backhand the puck in front of center ice to seal the Capitals' 4-2 win. The 39-year-old now has 33 goals on the season. Last night's goal was also Ovechkin's 1,600th point of his career. Stock markets on both sides of the border took a steep tumble today as the reality of a U.S.-Canada trade war took further hold, with the TSX losing almost 400 points, while the Dow was down almost 900 points. Here's a look at where things closed as we head to break. All right, you never know what you're going to get weather-wise in the month of March here in Nova Scotia, but it's shaping up not too badly, at least for the latter part of the week.
Yeah, this is a quiet week shaping up, which is great. The March break for the kids. And so, yeah, you don't want any major storms coming through, especially no snowstorms. You don't want to burn a snow day on a March break, right? And
they're precious, aren't they?
They really are. And we all know that, yeah, we can get big winter storms through the month of March for sure. So, yeah, some good news there. Have a look at our viewer picture of the day. We'll start there first, and we're going to zoom in. This is just north of Annapolis Royal, Hillsburn, and a beautiful shot here from Nancy.
That looks like a painting, doesn't it?
It does.
Just beautiful.
Yeah.
Got a good eye. Nancy's got a good eye.
Absolutely. Great shot there. Ryan's picks at cbc.ca. And have a look at the forecast for tomorrow, Hillsburn and Annapolis Royal, and also Greenwood. I think those are going to be our hot spots for tomorrow. 7-8 degrees in that area. Kentville, at least near 6. Truro, 5-6 degrees up to Pictou County as well. 4-5 degrees along most of the Atlantic coastline. That southerly wind will likely limit the heating there somewhat. And those southerly winds will be a factor, gusting 50 to 60 kilometers per hour. Wednesday, the winds shift back to northwest. So these are your highs in the morning, and then temperatures will fall into the afternoon. We will see some showers for Wednesday morning with those warmest of temperatures in place. As we can see here, there's we're into the warm sector of the system. Showers for Wednesday morning. Front comes through. Temperatures falling as we clear out on the other side. And there's Thursday, which does look pretty quiet. We should be around 2 this time of year, so that's a seasonal day Thursday, and then climbing above seasonal the weekend, looking mild, maybe a bit cloudy, some drizzle on Sunday, but overall, not a bad one.
Temperatures ticking up. Okay, Thanks for that, Ryan. Well, a community in Newfoundland was featured on a popular TV show. Have a look.
We were tasked with finding a coastal town where Cobell grew up, and Jess, our cinematographer, brought up Newfoundland.
Jess had done a film years ago in Fogo Island, and she's like, we gotta go see Fogo Island. And Ben and her and I did. We went up with Ryan, and everyone just loved it.
It was really incredible filming that. Just the landscape itself. It was just so cinematic. We were at this place in the world that was so hostile of an environment, and it was interesting that Harmony had grown up there. It was so cold, and icebergs are floating by.
It's beautiful, all right. And it's not every day you get to hear Patricia Arquette talk about the Bonavista Peninsula. The award-winning actress was one of the many stars who filmed an episode of the Apple TV Plus show Severance in Newfoundland.
Crews came to the area last year to film the 8th episode of the show's second season, which aired this past Friday. The show is directed by Ben Stiller, who also spent time in the region.
Hey, Hollywood North, huh?
Yeah, pretty good.
That's it for us tonight. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time.
Good night.